How can state aid support the social economy? General Block Exemption Regulation. What is the General Block Exemption Regulation, and how can member states use it to support the social economy with state aid? In the European Union, member states normally must notify the European Commission if they intend to grant state aid and wait for authorization. However, when member states comply with the conditions of the General Block Exemption Regulation, commonly referred to as GBER, they are exempted from this obligation. The GBER allows for a wide range of state aid measures that can provide vital support for the social economy, including aid for small and medium-sized enterprises and their access to finance, aid for training and upskilling, aid supporting the integration of people with disabilities and disadvantaged workers in the labour market, and aid for research, development and innovation. These exceptions exist because the benefits which state aid in these categories bring to society are presumed to outweigh the possible distortions of competition. In principle, aid granted under the GBER must have an incentive effect. It must incentivize activities the beneficiary would not carry out without it. For most aid granted under the GBER, the incentive effect must be demonstrated, usually on the basis of the aid application process. Where aid is granted ad hoc to large enterprises outside an aid scheme, however, beneficiaries must go further and submit a counterfactual scenario to explain what would happen in the absence of aid. On the other hand, certain categories of aid benefit from a simplified approach, including aid related to the social economy. For instance, the incentive effect is presumed for aid to support SMEs' access to finance or to cover the additional costs of employing workers with disabilities or disadvantaged workers. Yet there are limits to how much aid a beneficiary, even a social enterprise, can receive. All aid measures under the GBER must respect the permitted aid ceilings. Depending on the aid instrument and objective, the ceiling varies. It is generally expressed as a maximum percentage of the eligible costs. This is the aid intensity. For example, aid for the recruitment of disadvantaged workers shall not exceed 50% of the eligible costs, which are in this circumstance the wage costs over a period of 12 months. In the case of a loan or a guarantee with favourable conditions, the amount of the aid is expressed as the gross grant equivalent. That is the amount the aid would represent if it had been provided in the form of a grant, before any deduction of tax or other charge. Moreover, there are limits to the aid amount that can be block exempted. The European Commission needs to be notified ex ante if the intended aid to an individual beneficiary exceeds the applicable notification threshold. For every category of aid, a specific notification threshold applies. For instance, €8.25 million per project for investment in small and medium-sized enterprises, €3 million per project for training, €5.5 million per year for the recruitment of disadvantaged workers, €11 million per year for compensating the additional costs of employing workers with disabilities. In a nutshell, the GBER is an important instrument that enables member states to implement state aid measures directly, faster, and with full legal certainty in areas that are most relevant to boost the social economy. If you want to know more about the GBER, please visit the Commission website.